My name is Kaylee Mike, and I have designed a course entitled How to Make a Book Trailer. The course is intended for 8th grade students at the school where I teach. Many students don't like to read, and I wanted to find another way to help them get interested in reading by using audio and visual techniques as they analyze literature. The purpose of the course is to help them get interested in reading and to share their book trailers with their fellow students in order to persuade them to read their books. Another purpose of the course is to help students get started in a career and technical track for when they enter high school next year.
How to make a book trailer.
I used to make movie trailers in Hollywood, and I learned that in order to get people to come to your movie, you have to grab their attention. There are 2 ways to do this. Number 1, have a big star. That's the who. Number 2, have a great conflict. That's the what. You're trying to get your students to read, right?
Read.
Read!
Read. Read, read, read. Read.
Read!
Conflict is the problem that makes you want to find out what happens next. What are the characters trying to do or get? Take the Hunger Games, for instance. A few years before it became popular, a teacher friend of mine told me about a book in which teenage gladiators are fighting to the death. I just had to read this book. 3 days later, I was telling all my students about it. The story, the conflict, were so simple, but so compelling. And as we know, the Hunger Games became very popular, both in book and movie form. This first lesson is going to be on conflict, because the students need to know the what. Here are the objectives for the lesson.
Number 1, we'll be reviewing the plot diagram with students that they've covered before in class. 2, we'll give instruction to define conflict with visual examples, and then we'll give students practice with familiar stories. 3, we'll distinguish between internal and external conflict. 4, we'll define the types of conflict, man versus man, man versus nature, and self. 5, we'll moderate student discussions about conflicts in their books. 6, we'll give an formative assessment. 7, for the summative assessment, students will complete their plot charts for their books up to but not including climax.
All of the materials, including video footage and images, are found in the school shared drive under How to Make a Book Trailer, Lesson 1. 8th grade students are already familiar with this plot diagram because they have been using it in language arts.
Provide the diagram to your students and remind them that the conflict is the problem in the story. The protagonist and antagonist are the 2 opposing forces that cause the conflict, and the rising action leads to the climax where the conflict is resolved. A compelling story requires conflict, friction, obstacles to be overcome. A conflict is a struggle or problem in a story. Every story includes at least one conflict, and many stories describe several. After your instruction on conflict, provide this practice sheet to students. It lists familiar stories from books and movies that they have seen. Help them to identify the conflict in each of the stories. Please go ahead and add any other examples that are appropriate for your students. Help them to start identifying the conflict in their own book. There are 2 categories of conflict, external and internal. An external conflict is a struggle between a character and an outside force, such as another character, and an internal conflict is a struggle that a character has within himself. Here is a simple diagram that you can pass out to students to help them remember. Have students practice distinguishing internal from external conflict with this practice sheet. Again, add appropriate examples for your class and help students start to identify those internal or external conflicts in their own books.
There are several types of external conflict, but for 8th grade, we'll only be focusing on man versus man and man versus nature.
External conflict, man versus man. The character has a conflict or problem with another character, such as good versus evil, or some sort of physical battle. There's male versus female, child versus parent, especially teenagers, and just general arguments such as a court battle. External also includes man versus nature, when the character has a struggle or problem related to nature. This can be a natural disaster, environmental issues, man versus beast, or man versus wilderness. Internal conflict is if a character needs to think about a decision or whether he's choosing between right and wrong. The classic example is the devil and the angel on your shoulder, or choosing between two paths. There's identity crisis, or just hiding your true self from others. After your instruction, have students practice identifying man versus man, man versus nature, and man versus self conflicts in the same examples they've been using, and help them to find these types of conflicts in their own books. With students working in small groups, you can have them view these images either on their Chromebooks or you can project them on your classroom wall. Please feel free to use other images that you think may be more suitable. The discussion questions should also be applied to students' own books. Make sure that students are following discussion protocols and that they are engaging their fellow students with their conversations. You can check for understanding by walking around the classroom and listening to their group discussions. This might give you reteaching opportunities. The online quiz is available in Google Forms so that all the student answers will be uploaded into a spreadsheet for you to get quick results. Use these results to reteach as necessary. The last question contains this video. For the summative assessment, students will be completing the plot chart for the books that they have been reading.
Have them fill it out with the rising action up to, but not including, the climax.
Following is a sample to guide you as you grade student work. In the Hunger Games, the basic issue is man versus man. Katniss's conflict is she wants to win but also save Peeta. In the rising action, they go to the games. They begin their romance when they kiss, but only one can survive the games.
I hope you found this lesson helpful for you to get your students started finding the conflict in their stories. Next week, we'll be focusing on script writing and storyboarding. See you then.